Hello, thanks for joining me again today. I have a gratitude journal that I'm going to share with you today. And I made this out of index cards. My index cards are 3 inches by 5 inches, so I'm going to go ahead and cut a piece of chipboard to 3 1/4 inches by 5 1/4 inches to create the cover. And I'm going to cut 2 pieces of that. And I'm also going to cut 2 pieces of this Peaches and Cream cardstock at 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. Now these pieces of cardstock are going to wrap around that chipboard to create the pretty color for the cover. I'm going to be using white liner tape as the adhesive as I'm creating this cover. And you can see here that I'm adding that white liner tape to the edges of the Peaches and Cream cardstock, and I'm trying to get as close to the edge as possible on there. Then I'm going to edge the chipboard on both sides, with one side having a little bit of X through the center just to add a little adhesive to that center portion of the chipboard. So I'm going to grab my crease tool and I'm going to use that to burnish that white liner into the pieces. This makes the adhesive bond better with the paper fibers, so you get a stronger adhesive with it. I'm going to center that into the piece of Peaches and Cream cardstock. You want to get as close to center, but it's not necessary for it to be exact. Again, I'm burnishing that into that cardstock. And then I'm going to take a mouse pad and my crease tool, and I'm going to run my crease tool right along the edge of that chipboard, and I'm just making a nice little crease there so that as I go to bend this cardstock around the chipboard, it's going to bend a little bit easier. So now I'm taking a pair of Detail Pro shears and I'm just cutting away the excess there in the corner. I'm leaving just a little bit of cardstock between where I've cut out the corner and where the actual corner is. It's just a hair width of cardstock there, but it helps to wrap around a little bit and make the corners look a little bit neater. Now I learned this paper wrapping technique from Ginger at My Sister Scrapper. This was how she covered a album cover at one point, and I really liked how it looked. So this is the process I have used to create my album covers. So I'm taking the white liner release paper off, and I'm just folding those edges over. When you see me pick it up and kind of roll it against my mat, that's just helping me get that cardstock right up against the edge of that chipboard so that there's not any kind of little bit of overhang when it bends over around that chipboard. So burnishing that in, and then I went ahead and wrapped the second one off camera. I'm going to use these Good Life prints to actually cover the inside of the cover. And I store mine in these little plastic sleeves that I got from Hobby Lobby. I like that the flap closes so I can keep my scraps in there with me. And I just keep the cover sheet in there to tell me what papers are in the mix, as well as keeping a reference guide on the back that tells me what cardstock matches with the paper. So I picked out this really pretty peach pattern, and I'm just trimming this down to fit on the inside cover. Now my cover was 3 1/4 inches by 5 1/4 inches, so I'm cutting this to 3 1/8 inch by 5 1/8 inch to fit inside those covers. And I'm just going to go ahead and fit them in place just to make sure I got everything straight, and I'm going to use white liner tape to go ahead and adhere these inside the cover. Now the reason I put some white liner tape there in the center is because that chipboard is just a little bit powdery compared to the cardstock, and I just want to make sure that there is a good amount of adherence against that chipboard. So centering that into place and then just burnishing it again to make sure that that adhesive is just very tight against that chipboard and that cardstock so that it won't pull up. Repeat that for the second piece. I absolutely love this packet of printed paper. There's some gorgeous, gorgeous prints in there. And then just taking the release paper off of that, and again I'm going to just center it into place and then burnish it into place. And with that, both covers are covered up, so we're going to go ahead and start moving on to the decoration with it. There is a little black spot for some reason on the cardstock on that one cover, so I wanted to make sure I grabbed that one to be the one that I covered as I was doing this. So I've cut this piece down to 3 inches by 5 inches, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut this next piece down. This piece is cut at 2.5 by 4.5 inches. And at this point I decided it needed a little bit of a matte, so I pulled the Fresh Forest, which is one of the greens that matches in the printed paper, and I'm just cutting that 1/8 of an inch bigger all the way around. So I started thinking I was going to adhere everything down, and then I realized I wanted the banner put together, so I was trying to decide what color there. I decided to go with the pumpkin bread. It is, again, one of the colors from within the printed paper. I am using this stamp set with the Thankful that's in there. These stamps are awesome because the image is printed directly on the stamp. It's not a sticker. It's printed right on the stamp, so they cling to those blocks like crazy. And just used a little bit of our colorless pan pastel over the top of it because I am heat embossing this and I wanted to make sure that powder didn't stick to anything. Using gold embossing powder to heat emboss this sentiment. I love heat embossing. It's like magic as it melts. It's just so pretty. And I always tend to heat emboss my stuff from behind. It just seems like I get a smoother finish doing that. So I'm cutting a 1/4 inch strip of this mere gold paper. And then I'm going to use this summer branch die. I'm cutting that out of 3 different greens that all match the greens that are in that paper. So there's fresh sage, there's fresh forest, and there's lemongrass. And just trimming a little banner end on the ends of those pieces so I can adhere them down onto my printed paper. And a little bit of Journey Craft glue is what I'm using to adhere that mere gold paper down. I did get a little off camera there, and I think I just realized it, so I started pushing everything up a little bit. I tend to cut my pieces just a little bit long most times, and then I can go ahead and just trim off the edge of the paper when I get it laid out the way that I want. So I decided that I wanted a little bit of shimmer to that background, so I'm using some gold silk and just adding a little splattering. It's a little bit difficult to see in the camera just due to the way that my lighting was set up, but it looks really pretty in person. And then I'm taking those branch die pieces and I'm cutting sections off of it. Now this branch die, I love to cut little pieces off of it because the leaves are just such a pretty shape. And I started just cutting a few pieces off and then decided I'm just going to cut them all off and then I'll have them set aside for a future project. But as you go cutting them off, you can actually cut off all except for one leaf that's just a little bit adhered to the vine, so it doesn't come off as a full leaf when you cut it out. And I'm stacking my leaves in, just trying to find an arrangement that I like, and adhering those leaves down with a little bit of craft glue. Now because this particular piece of printed paper is cut to be a little bit smaller, it's kind of more of a focal panel in the cover, I'm actually letting the leaves hang over that just a little bit. Then I'm adding my sentiment up on a little bit of a foam square. Then I can go ahead and map my pieces. I'm just going to grab the white liner tape again because it was just right handy there. I had that little piece of white liner tape that was left over, so I just stuck it there in the center of that piece. And attach that to the cover and burnish it in, and we've got our two covers pretty much completed. So what I'm going to do here is take one of the index cards. I'm just centering it on my back cover. I'm going to pull out my press punch. I love this press punch. It's actually really nice to cut through heavier weight things. And it has 3 different sizes of tips in the end of the press punch. So you just unscrew it, stick your tip into the top of the punch, and then screw that little ring back on. And then just make sure that that's centered. And then I'm just going to take the press punch and I'm lining it up a little bit on the grid mat. It's hard to see where that little thing is underneath, but I lined it up with the grid mat, and then you just press down several times and it'll cut through all those layers. I have lots of adhesive and cardstock layered on, so it does take several pushes to actually get all the way through everything, but you can get through. This is a medium weight chipboard, but it's actually pretty heavy compared to some mediums that I have used before. So then I'm going to line up the back cover after I have those punches done and just use that to create a guide on the front cover as I go through and punch on that. And it does take a little bit of work. Again, like I said, there's lots of cardstock piled up there and there's lots of adhesive in there. So it does take just a little bit of effort to get through everything, but I love the press punch because it's a nice clean punch when it's done. Just lining everything up, making sure that it is actually lined up exactly as I want it. Then I just have a stack of index cards and I'm just working the punch through that stack using the index card that I used as my guide on the back cover as the guide for the index cards here. Then I'm adding these little 1/2-inch rings. I did pick these up off of Amazon some time ago, but I'm just going to use those as the rings on the book. And I'm going to add a little bit of fresh sage ribbon here. This is a satin ribbon. I'm just going to go ahead and tie that on one of the rings, just as a little accent there. Now, one of the reasons for adding this is because it just helps to balance out the layout just a little bit. All those banners and leaves kind of made the right side of the layout feel a little bit heavy, so this just gives a little bit of balance to that. It does take me a little while. I like to fuss with ribbon just to make sure I get the bow looking just how I want when I'm doing it. So as a final touch, I'm going to go ahead and take some fashion gold pieces and I'm just going to adhere them randomly around on the front cover just to add a little bit of extra accent. And that completes the little gratitude journal. This is a great little bullet journal. If you wanted to do just one line each day, you could do an entire week on one card. But it makes a really fun little way of just keeping track of what you're thankful for that day. If you have any questions about any products that are used on this project, I do have a full product list along with links to where to purchase on my blog. I hope you found this inspiring. Today I am so thankful for you. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. Much love to you all.